being prisoner of the moment here. We had kind of written off Boston, and now it's like they're fully back. But, Max, did they prove they're the biggest threats to the Warriors? I know Klay didn't play, but still.
No. You could argue that out of the East maybe, although I think still the Bucks, and I picked Toronto to start the season. No. The biggest threat to the Warriors remains the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets were the best team in the NBA last year. They would have beaten the Warriors if Chris freaking Paul was healthy. You realize Chris Paul didn't play? He didn't play, and the Rockets had the worst shooting night of all time, and they lost by single digits to the Warriors. And now that Rockets team essentially returns the same team. Trevor Ariza, Luka Mbamute, I understand, but it's essentially the same team. Only this time, guys, Chris Paul has his injury out of the way, right? Just enough runway to get his basketball legs for the playoffs. James Harden can now take his foot off the pedal a little bit. Clint Capella's back, and they are balling. It's going to come down to, of course, still, can James Harden hit big shots in the playoffs? But just because he hasn't in the past doesn't mean he can't. Now, look, you bring up, like, the Celtics, Molly, and how they just played. Mm-hmm. You know who the Rockets have beaten on the road in the last week or two? The Warriors, the Celtics, and the Raptors.
Yeah, they've won 6 straight.
They go on the road and beat the Warriors, Celtics, and Raptors, and they were clearly Golden State's biggest obstacle last year. Biggest obstacle since Golden State acquired Kevin Durant has been the Rockets, and they remain that way now. If James Harden can sink big shots, Stephen A., they can beat the Warriors.
Well, again, you don't get to make that argument because, according to you, he chokes. So there's no reason for us to believe that will change.
Choked. Past tense.
No, I understand. I understand the ED on the end, past tense. But I can pull up footage of quoting you. You will not believe in the Rockets until he shows up in the postseason because he has choked. I don't believe that about him, but you do. So as a result, you believing in Houston is really, I get where you're coming from, but I should be believing in them more than you. What I would say to you is this. I'm still going to roll with Boston. I don't like what I've been seeing. It's well documented. But listen, if Brad Stevens sits up there and prioritizes putting the best lineup of individuals in the game as opposed to taking care of his boy, then I'm not worried about it. If Gordon Hayward playing like that, you play him. Make no mistake about it. But for the most part, this season, that hasn't been the case. Up until last night, man, he was shooting by 31% recently, averaging 5 points a game. You can't continue to cost other guys minutes at the expense of that. He's got to continue to do better. And again, I'm happy for him, and I know it's only because of his injury. If he were healthy, we wouldn't be having that conversation about Gordon Hayward. I believe in him when he's healthy. But if he's not, you got to make sure you're willing to sit him on the bench. Having said all of that, I look at Kyrie, who can close. I look at Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and the combination of their athleticism and length and willingness to defend. Marcus Smart is a stout defender. Terry Rozier has no punk in him. Al Horford, questionable knees and all, can do some things for you, particularly pulling big men away from the basket. Bane is a big boy and doesn't mind banging. I'm looking at them along with the coaching of Brad Stevens, who I believe in. And I'm saying to myself, excuse me, it's going to be rough. Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, they're not going to be pushovers. I get it. But I believe in the Boston Celtics. I believe that they could still, if they got to come together, they can't fragment. But if they're together, I think they can pull this out. And I think they can represent the East. And I think they're the greatest threat to the Golden State Warriors when they're clicking. The question is, will they be clicking? In Houston's case, Max, it's just that James Harden, his greatness and everything, considering all of that, you're the Warriors. You see them coming. You know exactly what they're going to try to do to you. It's going to be hard to stop. I get it. But one-on-one isolation ball is not going to beat the Golden State Warriors, in my opinion.
It's not, see, on paper, it looks like isolation ball. But in fact, the bottom line about the Rockets is they get up many more threes than anyone.
That's true.
It's all threes and free throws. So it's only the highest, and like in the paint, it's only the highest, most efficient way to play basketball. In fact, the Warriors can play a more beautiful brand of basketball than the Rockets because they can afford to. It's more aesthetically pleasing, but it's theoretically at least less effective. It's the reason the Rockets are able to compete so evenly with the Warriors in spite of the talent gap, because Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni triple down on triples, right? So Harden has been running that to perfection, and Stephen A., now he's got a rested, healthy Chris Paul and Clint Capella.
I got to ask you this, Max, because you keep bringing up Chris Paul, and accurately so, and don't get me wrong. But Max Kellerman, you have never, ever, ever, unless I instigated, you have never brought up the fact that Andre Iguodala got hurt.
I'll address that.
I know you. That's why I'm asking you to, because the point is this. Andre Iguodala going down for that series, I think it was like game 1. I mean, he was out pretty much the entire series. When Andre Iguodala is in the lineup and relatively healthy, he exponentially improves their defense. They're able to get out on other shooters and therefore turn James Harden into an isolation player. And that's what I'm pointing to. How come you never bring up Andre Iguodala's injury?
I'll bring it up. Number one, if everyone's firing on all cylinders, I think we all agree the Warriors win the championship. It takes a little break one way or another, a little luck for another team to beat them because they're the best team. Right. I think I agree with that, and you agree with that, and everyone agrees with that, really. Yeah. I would say this. If your second best player is hurt, okay, that's a legitimate excuse. One of your 2 best players, that's what happened to the Rockets. Even if your 3rd best player is hurt, you know what? Your 3rd best player on your team didn't play, yeah. If it's your 5th or 6th best player who doesn't play, as great as Iguodala is, excellent. He used to be a great player. He's still a good one. If it's your 5th or 6th best player, brother, stuff happens. Like, no team comes in 100%. If your 5th or 6th best player is out, I don't want to hear it. Like, you look at the Warriors, the best player on the team is Steph or KD. Those are the top 2. And then you got Klay and Draymond. I think Klay has now passed Draymond. That's 4.